it just breaks my heart because there's this stereotype that people believe a lot of times, and it hinders people with disabilities to flourish, because unfortunately we do need help to get things done or to move forward or whatever it is, but if those people that are there to help us see us differently, or maybe see us as not capable or not able enough to do certain things, and that's not going to allow us to flourish. And so I think that's the biggest obstacle that breaks my heart for people with disabilities, is the judgment of others, the belief that because I am different, I am not worthy, or I'm not worthy enough, or equal enough, and not just in the church, but across the board in society, but especially in the church. Growing up, I was blessed with a very strong church community, so I don't feel that was a huge obstacle for me, and I know how fortunate I am. I'm not blind to that. But again, like I said, because of that strong community, or that strong belief that I was equal, I was able to flourish in my faith, in my community, and now I get to help others, who are in similar situations, or in different situations with social work. Charlene, is there anything that you think I could maybe add on to, or is that kind of the path that I'm going?
I think you're going right on the right path. I love things that you're saying. I agree with what you're saying, Araceli, again, and I love hearing it from you, of a person who has been experiencing some of these challenges, not only in the world, but unfortunately, even sometimes in the Lord's house, which of course, and I would ask all of you too, as you speak, if there's suggestions you have for the church of how we can do better. We're here, we're listening.
Right. Yeah. And kind of like Charlene said, in the church, a lot of times, we know that in the church, we are all God's children, and even outside the church, but especially in church. And when there is those people that maybe just by no fault of their own are ignorant to differences or to disabilities, but then still, become an obstacle for someone like me, it's a domino effect. I know that if I didn't have that strong Catholic community growing up, I would not be where I am today, because they believed in me, and simply because they treated me like any other 7-year-old in religious classes. I was, if everybody went outside, I did too. If everybody did homework, I did too. I was the same, and I think because others saw me the same, I saw myself the same, and so that allowed me to pursue my goals, to pursue my career, get my bachelor's degree, have this career that I do, and continue to help others through my job, and keep going through my faith. It goes back to what makes my heart happy, or what brings me joy. It's exactly that, to see others in communities, whether it's in society, in religion, in a workspace, treat those that are different as equal. It's so simple. It's really simple, but it's sometimes so hard for so many to do. Just treating everybody the way that they're not different. It changes people's lives. Like I said, it's the reason why I'm here today. And it's the reason why I've been, capable and worthy almost of being on a board like NCPD. It's a blessing.
Well, we're certainly blessed to have you on our board, Araceli. Thank you so much for all the ways you serve at your that your work there at Catholic Charities, in your society where you live, in your area, as well as certainly everything you do for NCPD. Very grateful. And we may have questions for you in a little bit too, so stay with us if you will.
Of course.
Bridget, did you want to go ahead and go next if it's a good time for you? Oh, okay, very good. Then everyone, please help me just welcome Bridget Brown to tell her story and answer those same questions. Bridget, what breaks your heart and what brings your heart joy? And a little bit about your background, please.
So my name is Bridget Brown, and I'm actually from Chicago in Illinois. So my personal experience is that I am a person with a disability and a national inclusion advocate. I am Catholic, and I have been with the CIDD group for many years. I'm very passionate about inclusion for people with disabilities in all walks of life. I was the first person with a disability included in my school and community, and now I am included in a college program at the University of Illinois at Chicago. I have seen people with disabilities segregated and try to inspire people to open their hearts, minds, and doors to include all people. I think it is important that we embrace inclusion in our churches and be a model for the whole world. I believe that Jesus taught us to be inclusive and care for every person, regardless of their abilities. What breaks my heart? When people with disabilities are ignored, lonely, left out, and have no funds or opportunities. Seeing people with disabilities locked up in state institutions, especially in Illinois. When students are in self-contained classes and not in general education classes with no access to the curriculum or to the opportunities in their school or church. When people with disabilities are not involved in the church community and are not invited to events, not welcoming as volunteers, and don't attend Mass. When they are segregated and ignored, left out, and forgotten. Like they have no gifts to share with the world with others in the church. It breaks my heart to learn about how many babies are aborted because they have a prenatal diagnosis all over the world. It breaks my heart when people with disabilities have no opportunity to share their voice and their thoughts and ideas. What brings your heart joy is when I see everyone with a disability included in the church, worshiping to God with family and friends. When people with disabilities are full participants in the whole church, when they are altar servers, readers, attend retreats, part of the choir, part of the youth group, and when they are invited to volunteer with church projects and the missions. When kids with disabilities are welcome and included in CCD and supported to be successful. When they have champions who recognize the sacred dignity of each person and they protected their dignity. When people with disabilities, when people have a voice, they can share their faith and hope and dreams with others who will care to listen. When people with disabilities are welcomed and listened to and have the same opportunities everyone else has in churches, in the community, and in their schools. When people are not segregated because we never segregate the people that we value.
Thank you, Bridget. Bridget, your advocacy always inspires me. There's a lot of people just affirming you. I see, Bridget, amen. We had similar experiences, some other comments in here. And there was another comment that I want to read that came, I think, right after Araceli spoke that I didn't catch quick enough. It just says that she can identify, he or she, it says, I can identify. I have birth defects of limbs and face. People treat us as ignorant and different, very unequal. At one point, I stopped attending church as I felt rejected by the people of God. And back to you for a moment, Bridget. I caught, in particular, many things that you said, of course, both of you so far, but Bridget, there was a phrase you said, care to listen. When people care to listen, I guess that spoke to me right now, especially because the idea of having a panel and people being able to share their experiences, everyone that showed up today cares to listen to your story and to the story of, whoever God puts in front of them, hopefully, right? So that was, I think, also very powerful and has a lot to say about what we need to do. And years ago, I heard it said that you can listen someone into existence. And I've always loved that phrase because I believe it's true. So with that said, I'm going to jump over to you, Deacon Ronnie, now, please, and allow you to have the floor.
Oh, thank you so much, Charlene. And again, welcome to everybody across the country or wherever in the world that you might be watching or listening. And Bridget, thank you so much for your sharing. I have to honestly tell you, I felt like it was an examination of my own conscience with regard to just some of the things that you presented. And Araceli, it's such a joy to meet you as a colleague, also as a fellow social worker. And I have to tell everybody that my story has been as a result of the very fact that, and I'll have to go backwards because since 2002, when my youngest son, Gabe, was born, he was born into the world with a neurodevelopmental disability called autism. And so Gabe is autistic, and he's the youngest of my three sons. And Gabe also has a brain disorder called encephalopathy of the basal ganglia, and it manifests itself in these awful symptoms of OCD and anxiety and things like that. And it has been that part of the journey that has given me the privilege and that lived experience as his father, but also now coming full circle when it all began in my, before I even got married and had children, when I responded to the call to become a social worker in the field of mental health. And I did that in Guam, where I worked with predominantly a caseload of men and women who suffered from serious mental illnesses. And at that time, of course, even before the advent of the newer kind of medications, really, really suffered. And so I think God began to plant in my heart and in my mind an opportunity to respond in a way that would take me then many years later to where I'm at now, not only as a social worker, but also as a permanent deacon. And so what broke my heart in the very early days was seeing just how my clients, these individuals that I worked with, were just so isolated. And I come from an island called Guam in the Western Pacific, and we definitely have a tremendous value of respect for the family, most especially the elderly and children, and of course, even those who are disabled. But it all comes with a caveat in that, depends on what the disability is. And so anybody who lived with a mental illness was obviously ostracized. They were alienated. They were not accepted. And in many respects, families kind of washed their hands and stopped being responsible for their loved ones. As sad as that sounds, that really did break my heart. And it really challenged me in terms of my cultural values. But even so, what also broke my heart was just the fact that the church wasn't responsive. And then fortunately, because of our late Archbishop, Felix Berto Flores, who had a niece who was in the mental hospital. She had Down syndrome, she had behavioral challenges, and she ended up being my client that I eventually was able to get out into the community and live independently. Things were just progressing for the better. The Archbishop made it possible that there would be a way of pastorally responding to the needs of the mentally ill by, for a better way of saying it, promulgating, allowing for a mass to be said every month of May of every year when he was alive, and till this date, it still happens, a celebration of the feast of Saint Dymphna, who is the patroness of the mentally ill, one of many patron saints of the mentally ill. And when I was working at that agency in Guam as a case manager and a social worker, I became involved in helping to make it happen. And more importantly, ensure that this annual event would become a cherished celebration, not just for the clients and patients, but also for the community. And so it was the very beginning of helping to destigmatize mental illness and to also allow people to understand the differences between someone who lived with an intellectual disability versus that of someone who lived with a organic or a mental illness disorder of the brain. Oh my, so that all took me down the career path of becoming a social worker. And then it was also part and parcel the response to become a deacon. So I was ordained in 2003. And as part of my pastoral formation, I brought Holy Communion to the patients at that agency, at that hospital. And eventually I left the island and moved to Hawaii, where Gabe was diagnosed autistic, and then found my way here to Washington State as a result of wanting to find services for Gabe, who will be 20 years old on December 20th. And now he is, there are still challenges. And as his father, as his parent, as his legal guardian, I still continue to learn. But there are instances along the journey that there have been moments where my heart gets broken. And there was one incident where I experienced that in my own faith community, my own parish. And again, it's an opportunity to help educate. And so that, therefore, brings joy to my heart, in that I realize that even in this adversity that my son is going through, and believe me, he wants to feel better. He wants to be included. And so these 2 years, 3 years of COVID really created a setback. And that really broke our family's heart, in that we weren't able to get him out into the community. There were things that he was progressing in terms of getting involved. And hopefully it'll get better. But because of that lost time, that was obviously a very difficult challenge. So even in that adversity, even in as we've often been reminded, the challenges and the cross that we bear as a family, not that we wanted this cross, but we see this as a redemptive opportunity to grow in holiness. And that brings joy to my heart. To a certain degree, obviously, because everybody's different in the way they see this, I hope that can be the message that I can also help other families that I have been privileged to be able to help along the way, who have children or live with autism and other behavioral health challenges. So that's why it's taken me to the NCPD and to the Council on Mental Illness and Wellness. And it really is, again, a vocation, a response to a call. And I'm hoping each day that God will give me the grace to be able to do that according to what he wills. And so that brings me joy in my heart when I'm able to go to bed at night and say, yes, Lord, thank you for the opportunity. I put it back in your hands again. Oh, thank you, Charlene, for allowing me to share this. But I have to tell you, just listening to Araceli and to Bridget, you've inspired me to tell that story. I don't think I've ever really told it like that.
Well, thank you for giving us the privilege of hearing it then first, Deacon. Yeah, emotional, very personal. This is your own journeys. And as I'm telling you, as I read the chat, and you may not even had time to do that yet, but there are definitely people that are, as always, touched by your stories deeply because they can relate to different things each of you have said. We've got people commenting that they also suffer from mental health issues, OCD, ADHD, PTSD, anxiety. Currently one of the lucky ones, working with others. Thanks for serving. I guess that was for you, Deacon. And thank you, Deacon, for seeing a moment as an opportunity to educate. That's awesome. I was speaking to a parent yesterday, and I'm not sure they may even be on this call with us today, that, you know, it was talking about just when you have these situations, and you know, some of the ones that break your heart, but they are exactly that. They are opportunities, absolutely God-given opportunities to educate somebody else. You know, even Araceli, you use a wheelchair that, you know, and I know I was speaking to someone recently, talked about, you know, people will come up and push the wheelchair without asking first. I mean, it seems like, and they commented they saw something on our website that was advising people about that, you know, and it seems so simple, like you were saying earlier, Araceli. And I often say sometimes we make things harder than they are. You know, a lot of it is just, someone's mentioned in this chat too, it's about respect, or respecting each other. And certainly when we see each other as made in God's image, it's much easier to do that. And this says, let me see if I can read the chat for us. It says, sure, it says, okay, this is a question. I think this was to Bridget. It was, I'll start by sharing my thinking on the question, which was, she had a catechetical leader who was separating persons, I think, in the faith formation program at a parish, individuals who, in particular, who had Down syndrome. And she was inquiring whether this was what Bridget in particular, living with Down syndrome, thought of this situation. So she's explaining, if I'm saying it right, I would much rather all learners be together and supported, learning together, learning about our faith in with same age peers. The importance is to provide an experience of faith being together that catechists help learners reflect on. So the real focus is experience, which supports content. But content isn't the emphasis. There are lots of ways to do this. However, this parish catechetical leader is focused on the learner's learning content. So again, that's, and if you understand now, Bridget, kind of a little bit more about what she was asking, what do you think about when you separate someone who has disabilities into a different room? I think you touched on it earlier, versus having us together in a learning environment. You want
Well,
to speak to that? I know you're struggling a little health-wise today.
yeah, I am a little bit. No, I look like I'm like a walking like a
Oh,
dad.
you look beautiful as always.
Thank you. Well, thanks for saying that, Charlene. Well, as what I said, we are struggling right now in Illinois, with segregation and state institutions, and so, so yeah, in our community, and now I know that we have like a lot of millions of churches in Chicago itself, and also in Illinois suburbs area. Some people with disabilities, that are my friends, they go to church, and some of them do altar service, some are involvement in their church, some are not. And so that's why we're struggling it today, because not a lot of people go to church since COVID. And because of that, it's a hard time for everyone to come just in one area to sit in. And so it's hard as it is now, but now because of things are changing, it's very hard to see that. So, but what I said before about what breaks my heart, we're not at the feet of Jesus. We have a long way to go in Illinois for inclusion, especially now, because due to with not just state institutions, because we had 10 out of them, and most of them are closed, but not all of them yet. And then there's some that are like, we have a lot of like sellers and group homes and stuff like that. But some of them don't go actively to churches. But some of the people that disabilities that live in suburbs, they go to church. And so, and some do, like, they have a Bible study. My friend Kristen Zeller has a Bible study that she does. So, and then we have like, Alpha, it's a program, and Catholicism, communities that my parents go to with the Our Lady Mount Carmel, is a church that I grew up at. But since everything changed and stuff, from there, like, it's hard for seeing more people to come in and having their doors open to include people with disabilities now. But if they want to change in a way where they invite me to come and speak all the churches, because I do some of them, then they could start changing the ways of learning to including people with disabilities in the church, like bringing each other to the feet of Jesus. And so it's like talking like that, like trying to get people to be accepted. And like, I was thinking of Sean, the one that from Massachusetts that came to see the Pope with me. That came through NCPD, invited us to come to see the Pope Francis, and he was not accepted in the beginning in the church, but then he started to get to know the ministers there, and they helped him to be included. It's like that. Their doors were open for him, but not in his early years. But now we're facing that in Illinois. They're not just welcoming them or having them open the doors. It's like they're not letting them in the church area. And so, like, I'll give an example. Like, I'm involved in an adventure Bible class at a church out in Oak Brook. And it's like, it's for people with disabilities. And they have changed. They are doing live music in the classroom and not in the church. That's segregation. We need to be in the worship area to sing and be with the church, not doing that in a classroom where that is kind of like separate from the church area. So that's what I'm trying to say, that we need like more people to be involved in the church, and also to greet people or give them like flyers for like this Christmas thing that they're doing, or an events for the church, that if the church has an events to do, invite them. Sometimes the church has those and they do not invite those people with disabilities. So that's what we're right now struggling with. Not just people with Downs, but many other disabilities.
Excellent, Bridget. And everybody's really loving your phrase, at the feet of Jesus, and that we're not at the feet of Jesus, etc. Beautiful way to say, just to state our reality, and to give us something to strive for. Deacon Ronnie, please.
Yes, Bridget, thank you so much. I really love that phrase too, but I also appreciated how you described how sometimes, and I think this was part of that breaking of my heart, was an experience where, because of the sensory issues, and we were fortunate to have a space in our church where we could have folks that maybe didn't feel very comfortable being in the inside of the church, but but they would sit outside. Anyway, we had glass doors. So we not only were the doors being closed, and so I asked the usher, could you leave one door open so that we just feel that sense of connection? And the response that I got back was, oh, but then the people inside the church will hear too much noise out here. And of course, what was the noise? It was the noise of stimming and noise of maybe talking out loud. And so that was the education moment where I actually asked the usher, please leave the door open. It helps us to feel connected in some way with the celebration of the Eucharist and with everyone, even if it means that we're just a little bit noisy out here. Don't worry, we'll take care of it. And it took a bit of a little tussle, but we were finally able to do it.
Yeah, there's sometimes, really big things that we can do, and sometimes there's very little simple things that we can do that make a difference to an individual or a family or a community. And that's what I'm hearing a lot of you say. I'm seeing some other comments in the chats, and there's a discussion here a little briefly I just noticed about, and I'll just speak to this real quickly, but it's just the difference between, I guess, from inclusion terminology, really, inclusion versus mainstream. Mainstream, in my opinion, was a word that we used many years ago, more than we do today. And I would agree from what little I'm catching the gist over here is that, it was, you were put in a room with other people, other maybe neurotypical learners, but there really wasn't any accommodations or modifications made. You were just, that was what my memory of mainstream looked more like in years past, where today when we talk about inclusive education or educational settings, it is talking about someone neurotypical, diverse learners together, learning and working and playing and growing together, but with appropriate supports as are needed based on real needs of that individual. So, and then I would just add to that, gospel values are always going to equal full inclusion. We know that. That's the gospel values. Are we all there yet? Every parish, every diocese? No. But like I think Deacon Ronnie, you mentioned, it is a process. Life is a journey, and disability ministry is no different in the sense of it being a process sometimes. So it may not happen overnight, but hopefully, I'm confident we're going in the right direction. We just know there's still more work to do, of course.
I agree with what you're saying, Charlene. There's one thing I forgot to mention. So have you guys heard of the story of Capernaum story that is in the Bible, that about the paralyzed man that was lowered down in the front of Jesus and that he healed him?
Mm-hmm.
Well, there's a story about that in a show called The Chosen by Dallas Jenkins that he kind of created it. Now, Dallas is the son of a guy named Jerry B. Jenkins. That's his father, and he wrote the Left Behind series. And so I recommend seeing The Chosen because it's really cool. And they have a story based on how some friends lift up their friend that was paralyzed and made a lift and put that friend down in front of Jesus, and the whole church was crowded, like the whole house was crowded. And so he said, get up and walk. And he got up and walked. And so that is what we should be doing today, is be in front of Jesus' feet and walk in the path of Jesus. And how, what I would say, think about, if you walk in the path of Jesus, you're walking in the path of a person with a disability, because that's what their faith is. Not just I'm Catholic. Jesus healed me when I was 35 years ago. I had heart surgery, and when he healed my heart with that major surgery, I am now still walking in that path today. Look at me now. God has had a purpose, and each person that has a disability have a purpose. And I think that we need to think about the purpose, the vision, and our mission to help those people that are not just in, when you talk about mainstreaming, we want more people in the mainstream area and not in like the exclusion of that mainstreaming, because that we're trying to get like connection between God and to those people. Like if you look at a person with a disability or Down syndrome, you could see the face of God inside of them, or Jesus. And so like completely like you see that, and you grow up with these people. And I thank all the people with disabilities for their generous and compassionate hearts, because they're the people that we should serve. That's what I'm suggesting.
Amen, Bridget. Amen. One other comment I see here is someone just, I want to catch this because it says, kind of paraphrasing what she's saying, a priest had, Father Greg Boyle had said in the past. It says, we seek a compassion that stands in awe of what the poor and or persons with disabilities carry, rather than stand in judgment or fear of how they carry it. So I think that kind of is a nice little summary too that was shared in the chat. Inclusion is an education term within community life, particularly church. There is a concern that the word inclusion implies a power structure, deciding who is included and ways of participation, rather than being open to new ways of participating and being church together, which also true. Thank you. Someone says we have a both and setup. Our special needs program, they're still talking about formats of models, I think, of how they're working with people with disabilities in different parishes. They have their own classes, yet they attend mass occasionally and serve as gift bearers, etc. Sometimes they serve at the Knights of Columbus breakfast, helping with that. The adults have a number of altar servers and someone who are members of the Knights of Columbus. So they're just talking about ways that different or people with disabilities are involved in the full life of a parish, which I've always said, if you want conversion for your faith community, get people with disabilities and their families involved in the full life of your church, and the Holy Spirit will work through them. Here's a question, I think. Any suggestions on how to open the minds and hearts of parishioners regarding the severely mentally ill who might enter Mass more so for shelter than wanting to attend Mass? They may or may not be Catholic, obviously, and certainly some downtown churches will have this reality often. Deacon Ronnie, I guess I'd just ask, you might have some input on that.
Actually, I was going to say, I'm going to take that. That's an agenda item that we definitely on the council would want to have a discussion on, in helping to support our diocese and archdiocese throughout the country.
Right. Thank you. Araceli, I just want to open the door up again for you. Any other comments or things you'd like to add? I'm sure you have other thoughts on your mind.
Yeah, so I've been reading a lot of the comments as they go, as they're being posted, and I first of all love the interaction from our viewers. I think it's really, really great to see how many people relate to these topics and relate to these issues. And like I said at the beginning, it's beautiful and inspiring to see that so many care about people that live every day like me and Bridget and so many of us around the world. I did want to go off of somebody mentioned having both individual classes and integrated classes, and I do think that is a beautiful compromise. I think the biggest benefit of having an integrated class is not necessarily the education portion of it, although it's important, but the human interaction portion, that people with disabilities who maybe often don't get that time with their peers or with others their same age or with same interests, having that be just a normal part of catechism is great, and I think gives them the the desire to, okay, well, if my peers are learning this, then I definitely want to try to learn this, because we're all the same. So I do love that idea of doing both, maybe having a more individualized class for very specific things to be learned, whether it's they need to learn it in a different manner or whatever it is. I think that's amazing that is being done. it's a good compromise, I think. And I also love the somebody commented about people with mental health issues wandering into mass, kind of using it more as a shelter, because they don't know any better. And I think it's so sad that, somebody mentioned they were considering, locking the doors and having weapons on hand, and that's exactly where the problem lies. Instead of having this fear of someone because they're different or because they don't understand the same way that you and I do. That's exactly what the problem is. And that's exactly why so many accidents happen where maybe someone is being shot instead of being helped or being, hurt instead of given treatment. I love that someone responded and said, the priest and the ushers worked together and beautifully, assisted this person and wherever, if that person comes back or not, I'm sure in their hearts, they felt safe because they weren't run off. They weren't seen like some sort of monster because they can't express themselves the same way. In my church, my local church, we had that happen a few months ago. We had a homeless gentleman come in to mass and very, dirty and just clearly a lot of mental health issues. And I was, as I'm sitting there, next to my mom in the pew, I was like, oh, please don't treat him like an animal. I was just very worried. And thankfully that didn't happen. They asked him if he needed water, if he needed food, and gave him some resources and, assisted him. And that, as a person with disabilities, but also as a social worker, it was just really relieving to see that my own parish, took the right action towards addressing that. So I think it goes back to everything we talked about, just not judging and being open-minded. And clearly all of us that are on this call right now are, or else we wouldn't be here right now, but just kind of helping spread that among our churches and among our community. It's the only way we'll make a difference.
Thank you, Araceli. So very true what you just said as well. And people are again affirming your comments. And to your point that, yes, thank you to our audience who has been very active in the chat. I've been having trouble keeping up with that. It's energizing too, even for the panelists, to see how well and closely you're listening to them and all the questions and comments that you have to share back and forth. I know we did it in this format just because there was a large audience, so it made it hopefully manageable and again allowed the panelists time to share what they wanted to share with us today. But I am confident NCPD will continue where faith and disability meets panels in the future. As a matter of fact, someone emailed me a great idea right before this one started. I won't share it with you yet, but it was brilliant. So more to come is what I can say, and clearly for good reason. We need to hear each other and we need to learn from each other. And bottom line, we all said it, we need each other. We need God, but we need each other where God lives through us every day, every moment. Any final closing comments from any of you? I know we're coming up on 2:00 and I want to keep people on to their schedules. Yes, Ronnie.
Yeah, so Charlene and Bridget and Araceli and everybody who participated today, this, I think, really brings joy to the heart, to my heart. It does. And thank you so much, Charlene, for allowing the NCPD to sponsor this and many other future events. But I really think that this is a really great way to also help us kick off our Advent season when we think about the babe in the manger who came and became man, God becoming man, and he came to take on our needs and all of our everything that we experience the joys and the sufferings and the adversity that we all face. And I think if we can keep that focus, then this Christmas will really definitely help us become more in tune with our brothers and sisters who really are valuable resources to the church.
Invaluable, I would even add. Yes, absolutely. And again, in reminding everyone, we kind of did this as a way to raise and honor the upcoming International Day for Persons with Disabilities. We wanted to do something, and this is what we thought to do. So keep that in mind. Keep an eye on, probably something coming from the Vatican, I would suspect, on the 3rd, which I believe is Saturday, the actual date of this international celebration. That, again, is obviously very near and dear to everyone on this call's heart. So with that said, I'm going to ask you, Deacon Ronnie, do you want to give us a blessing and send us on our way on this Advent
Yes,
journey?
I'd be very happy to.
Thank
Bow
you.
your heads and pray for God's blessing. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord look upon you and be merciful to you. May the Lord show you his kindness and give you his peace now and throughout your life. And may Almighty God bless you, the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Let us go in joyful peace. Thanks be to God. Yeah.
Thank each one of you. Bridget, Araceli, Deacon Ronnie, God bless you. And everyone else, God bless you. Happy Advent.
Thank you. Take care, everyone.
Araceli and Bridget, what a joy. I am so happy to meet you both today. And I can't wait to meet you in person, God willing, through the events of the NCPD. But Charlene, again, thank you so much. I have to run and go on to my next event, but I am looking forward to watching the recording.
Yes, we should have it posted.
And sharing it with others. Thank
Yes,
you.
please do. Thank
Yeah.
you. Thank
All
you,
right.
Ronnie. God bless
Bye-bye.
you.
Thank you so much, Charlene,
You are
for
very welcome. It was
Lester and Bob for putting this together. And
we enjoyed it.
to be honest, I had no idea it was this many people. When you sent that email earlier, you were like, "Oh, it's 60 people registered." I was like, "Oh, hold on, this is big."
Yeah,
But everybody was so